It is now recording.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone to our first international Zoom meeting. The hope is that we can kind of share experiences and lessons learned and find out about the interesting projects that are ongoing throughout the district, because people do tend to kind of know bits about each other, but not a lot. I will say to you, John, I've had at least 10 apologies from people who would like to have joined and were interested in your project, but have other commitments through their own club Zoom meetings and things, and have requested that we record it so that they can go in and see it later on. So without further ado, I will pass you over to John Calder from the Rotary Club of Banff. And John's going to speak to you about his work with vocational training centres in Ghana, providing boreholes, toilets, workshops and accommodation hostels. Over to you, John.
Thanks very much, Mary. And welcome everyone. I guess I'm the pilot episode of this series.
Yes.
So here's hoping. Right, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it's going, hang on. What's happened? What's happened? Right, I'm back. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I went to share screen and then all of a sudden everything went blank.
It always happens at the wrong time.
Right, okay. Okay, is that showing now, is it?
It is, yes.
It is, right. Okay. I've been working with vocational training centres in Ghana for over 6 years now, mainly with one centre at Wimaman ISIS, Technical and Vocational Training Centre. Now, some of you might think I've spelled ISIS wrong, but we're talking about a totally different ISIS. ISIS stands for Integrated Community Centre for Employable Skills. So a wee bit about at Wimaman ISIS Training Centre. It's based in the town of Atwima and it operates under the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations. So there is an ISIS directorate in Accra, and the Director General there reports directly to the Government Minister. It's in a very poor rural area, and there's about 30 villages all in proximity, not necessarily all in walking distance. Now, I first went there in January 2014, not as a Rotarian, but really myself and my wife went over partly for a holiday to see a bit of Ghana and partly to establish a project for Books Abroad. Books Abroad, the book charity, whom I'm sure that a lot of you will be aware of. Anyway, we were driving along the roads and I saw this little place, asked what it was, and I was told, oh, it's a vocational training centre. I said, can we stop? And we did. The manager was there, very, very nice chap, but the facilities were very, very poor. There was 2 buildings. One was actually condemned, it wasn't habitable at all, and the other was extremely basic, with 3 classrooms and a wee office for the manager. There was no toilets, no running water. And they had 47 students, 32 male and 15 female. There were tuition fees, some 30 CD per term. In their days, that's about £7 a term. But not everybody could afford to pay that. So a lot of them came and didn't pay any fees at all. There's 63 of these ISIS centres in Ghana. And they are scattered throughout Ghana, 13 in the Ashanti region, where Kumasi is and where Wimaman is. Youth unemployment is very, very high in Africa, and Ghana is no exception. In some regions in Ghana, youth unemployment exceeds 50%. So really, half of the youth in Ghana really have no future to look forward to. The Millennium Development Goals successfully increased the number of free primary school education for all. But there are still problems when trying to access secondary and tertiary education. Not all of the secondary and tertiary education is free, and even the government ones that are free are generally of a relatively poor standard. But finance is the main thing, particularly in the poorer areas. So we have children that go to primary school and then drop out. So we have partially educated youngsters unable to continue their education and no skills to assist them into our already difficult employment market. These youth stripped of hope, looking for a miracle. They gather in street corners and inevitably get into some sort of trouble. I have witnessed this in other African countries that I've visited, Kenya, Tanzania, and of course Ghana. It's a recipe for disaster. I believe that these youths need assistance, and by teaching them practical skills such as bricklaying, joinery, tailoring, hairdressing, etc., they will have a better chance of employment in the future, or in fact to establish their own business. And in fact, there's a very, very good example that Rotarian Richard from the Rotary Club of Kumasi Nyasu, he's a prime example. He is an ISIS graduate. He now owns and runs a very successful construction company, and he'll be working with me next year or later this year on another project. So, as I said, first went there in January 2014. I had a look at it, and I came away with the feeling that, you know, if I ever come back to Ghana, I would like to try to do something to help this little centre. But no sooner was I back from Ghana, and then I was asked by district to lead a VTT project. That VTT project was providing business mentoring to small businesses. And it was a blank sheet of paper sort of project. So I had to start from scratch. I had to find a location and a host Rotary club, design a program, recruit a team. So the first thing was, where are we going to go? I had some contacts in places Sri Lanka, Rwanda, Kenya, Ghana. But the most positive response I got was from the Rotary Club of Kumasi East, which is in the Ashanti region of Ghana. The president then was Marian Owusu, and her background is very much in education and training. So Ghana it was. So this strangely gave me the opportunity to think I might be able to do something for this centre. In October 2014, I visited Ghana again, and that was to do a scoping visit to scope out the VTT project. And we needs assessed the training centre at Wimaman, and they were included in the project for mentoring. Whilst I was doing this, I asked the manager, whose name is Alex Adai, what centre where would you like to be in 5 years? And to my surprise, he told me that he had drawn up a 5-year development plan, but really it was only a dream, as he would be unable to find the funding to make it happen. The plan was quite basic, but it was a sound footing nonetheless. It could be developed through the mentoring process. I asked him what he considered to be the most pressing part of his plan, and he replied, the accommodation hostel. A lot of the students, and a high proportion of the students, do actually need to live in. These students were all living in very poor quality digs in one of the local villages. No electricity, no toilets, no water. It was quite poor. Anyway, I thought, how am I going to get the money for this? It didn't take me long. I phoned up the local MP, and he agreed to put in a third. Asked the local assemblyman, that's the assembly is pretty much the same as our local councils, and the local, the assemblyman said the district assembly would put in a third. And so, and without consulting my good lady, I offered to put in the other third. And so the project could begin, and it did in December. I went back in April 2015, and as you can see, work is working, going away quite well. What I will say about this is that the costings that we were working to were for materials only. There was a ready supply of labour. The students, what better way to learn about bricklaying than laying bricks on a live project? It really was a win-win situation. The students got real practical experience, and they were also building their own, accommodation hostel. It really was working, quite well. I had insisted at the outset that a steering group was set up to oversee the project, rather than leave it, solely in the hands of the manager. So that steering group was set up, and that consisted of the local MP, the local assemblyman, and local stakeholders. There's lots of chiefs in Ghana. Everywhere has a chief, so the chief and the chief's representatives. You can't really do much unless you have the blessing of the chiefs. So we can see that things are moving on, and that is some of the members of the steering group that you can see there. Went back again in October 2015, and that was the first visit of the VTT project. And you can see now that this hostel has actually moved along quite nicely. The second visit of the VTT project was in 2016, in March, and here we see that there's toilets under construction. Now that was the manager, through the mentoring process, had been able to secure enough funds to from elsewhere to actually start this. And as you can see, we have Vinnie Ruparellia, who is also a member of Banff Rotary Club and was a member of the VTT team. So we saw that. This other block here are the urinals. We can see that the hostel is continuing to progress. We're at the roofing stage now, and there's the students up there doing it. Health and safety isn't quite as strict in Ghana. Unfortunately, during the summer, the manager, Alex Ade, had a very serious road accident, and he was in hospital and off work for quite a number of months, and the project stalled somewhat. But nonetheless, we were making progress, and it wasn't, really huge sums of money we were actually talking about here. Although it's a fairly substantial construction, it really wasn't costing too much. Also, what we had is there's plenty of land at this centre. The local MP had managed to arrange for a digger machine to come, and he flattened an area of land that was for the football pitch. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, they say, and really we had to provide some facilities for the students to, non-academic stuff. So here we have the hostel in 2017, more or less complete. And I visited again in March 2017. This was the final visit of the VTT, and that really was to commission the impact assessment of the VTT project, which turned out to be very, very good. And in the businesses that were mentored, employment within a year of the mentoring finishing had increased by 30-odd%. It created quite a number of jobs. So the VTT project itself was good, and this project was also going ahead as well. There's the toilets. So, as I say, I was there in March 2017. Like many African countries and other countries throughout the world, the Ghanaians love ceremony. So there was a huge ceremony for the opening of the hostel. All the local dignitaries were invited. There was hundreds there, including the students. And this is a picture here of myself and the MP. And that ceremony was in 40-degree heat, and it lasted for about 2.5 hours once we'd got all the speeches going. So that was me at the start. I was looking slightly more bedraggled at the end. And this is a picture of me with the King of Kumasi. His actual title is Anantahene, but that really means King of Kumasi. And he was a very nice gentleman by the name of Bafu Ragai Fosu Titwakpa. And he was very, very interested in the thing, and he keeps in touch with what's actually happening. So you can see that once we'd got something on the ground, that hostel being completed, we had really quite a good buy-in from everyone. So from a very small, sketchy development plan, we now had a development plan which had the 2-unit hostel block, 2-unit workshop, borehole, shower room, toilet facilities, soccer and volleyball facilities, classroom block, sports kit, farming and laboratory. The hostel's done at this point. The toilet facilities are in. The soccer and the volleyball facilities were in. The sports kits were in. So we were making good progress. At that point, I felt because we had had success, I could then ask other people in Scotland if they wanted to contribute some funds. And my club were quick to say, yes, please. And they contributed the money to build the shower block. That money was given in March 2017, and here we are nearing completion 1 month later. The next item on the agenda was the workshop block, and here we have it. We've done the founds and we're getting the first rows of bricks in by June. October, we're a bit further ahead. November, and this was March 2018. I pay an annual visit once a year, normally in about March, just to see what's happening and keep up with everything over there. So there was still quite a bit of work to be done, because on the 23rd of March, the opening ceremony was going to take place and hundreds of people had been invited. So here's the students laying the floors 1 week before, and this is what the outside is looking like that same day. 6 days later, we're a bit further on, but not quite ready. We've got 24 hours to go. That's it on the day, and it was completed. Really, it was quite a construction. So that took 1 year. The hostel took considerably longer, but we had got that one over and done with. We now knew really much better how things would go, and we got that completed. That digger you see there had nothing to do with the workshop block. That was in to clear a bit of land in preparation for boreholes. So by this time, the local stakeholders had really bought in, and the chiefs were contributing timbers, bags of cement, even local businesses, a bag of cement, some roofing sheets, and that's how this goes along. So at that point, I thought, right, well, we're doing quite well here, and I thought I would visit a few other training centres just to see, the facilities there. Although they were slightly better than the original state of this training centre, they were so sadly deficient. So we thought about it, and I thought it would be nice if we could give, boreholes. We had obviously had a borehole with storage facilities planned for this centre, and I thought it would be nice if we could extend it. So I applied for district grant and was lucky enough to get it. And with the 10,000 that we got, £10,000 that we got, we were able to drill 3 boreholes, one with storage facilities, and these boreholes are going 80 metres deep, and they're mechanised, so there's a downhole pump. We managed to pay for the delivery of a 20-foot container of books containing 45,000 books for the 13 Ashanti training centres. And we also delivered a 2-day seminar to the centre managers and senior staff on librarianship. So that's what, you know, £10,000 did for us there. So that's the mobile drilling rig at Weemerman, and this is again at Weemerman, where they're starting to build the storage platform. In 2019, went back, and the idea was to commission the 3 boreholes, and here's it. And again, you can see there's lots of people about, and this is the commissioning of the borehole at Negleshi and Manfro. Now that is actually you know, just outside Accra. The ISIS directorate felt that we should try to do something out with the Ashanti region. Here we are at a juryman, and again, you know, we are doing the commissioning. We had nice plaques made. These are actually marble plaques. They look very impressive. They cost £50 locally to be made. This is the local chief. And that district grant, the club funding for that came partially from my own club, the Rotary Club of Banff, but also there was a substantial amount given by the Rotary Club of Pendleton from Oregon in the USA. So we have, you know, we had quite a number of, you know, different you know, clubs involved. We have a sister club in Norway, the Rotary Club of Kopervik, and Kopervik, you know, have given monies into this project as well, particularly to start off the farming agricultural side of it. So this is March 2019, and that's what was the old 3 classroom teaching block. A bit bigger now, and it looks an awful lot healthier. Still needs a wee coat of paint, but the paint wears quite quickly on these things because they have some torrential rains at times during the year. This was the condemned building, and it's been quite, you know, it's been rebuilt more or less. And that now provides some extra classrooms. That's the end of it. Someone's done a nice wee bit of artwork there. There's the volleyball court, the football pitches. That's the workshop block. That's the accommodation block. There's the storage tower for the water. There's the agricultural unit. They're sort of growing mushrooms in there at this point in time. As I said, that was funded by the Rotary Club of Kopervik from Norway. That's the shower block and the toilets. The toilets are looking as though they could be doing with a lick of paint. And of course, after we had finished the workshop, we started on another hostel for the girls. This is a slightly bigger hostel, and you can see that by February of this year, fairly good progress is being made. A wee bit slower than we would have liked, because the district assembly were a bit slow in providing some of the funding, but it's getting there. So the expenditures to date, 169,000 Ghana CD. And the funding that we put in, which I consider to be seed funding, because it's less than a third of the total funding. The majority of the funding is coming from local sources in Ghana. So funding £53,000, which is about £10,000. So in other words, £35,000 would have covered all these constructions. because there's no labour costs. And then, of course, there was the 60,000 Ghana CD, £10,000 district grant for the borehole. So when we look at what we had January 2014 to what we had March 2020, we've got 8 buildings now rather than 2, only one of which was usable. There's no toilets or running water. We now have toilets in a borehole. Total number of students up from 47 to 104. And importantly, the gender imbalance is changing, because what we tended to find is, and I have conducted surveys at other centres, is that the centres that don't have any toilet facilities, where you have to go into the fields, there's many, many fewer girls at these centres. So the gender imbalance is changing. The dropout rate was relatively high. When we only had 47 students, we were seeing, between 2 and 6 dropping out every year. That's a lot. It is going down, but the total number of students has more than doubled. And the reasons now for these dropouts are still financial. The fees are still the same, and it's about £4 or £5 in today's money. But that's it. The government have actually just announced that they are actually going to make these training centres free. But when that will happen, I don't know. And the student absences are declining, but we haven't done a full analysis of that yet. So really, we've had quite a lot of success in what we've done. It's been very good that the centre manager, with whom I've done most of the work, is a very capable person, willing to learn, and he really is doing well. And in fact, he just informed me a couple of weeks ago that he's been able to secure funding for a new 6 classroom block, and also funding for an ICT lab, because the current ICT lab is about 1.5 miles down the road. It's not really the right thing, but it was the closest we could get. So he's secured that funding by himself, which is a big step forward from this, where we were when I first met him. Anyway, based on all that success, I talked with the ISIS directorate, the ISIS regional coordinator, and the Rotary clubs in Kumasi, and we thought we could perhaps extend the assistance to a number of other of the Ashanti training centres if we went for a global grant. So what we've come up with is we're going to provide facilities, or hoping to provide facilities, for 5 centres. And the facilities that we're going to provide are mechanised boreholes with storage facilities, toilet blocks with hand washing facilities, and shower blocks for 1 or 2 of them. We have all the detailed drawings. I have bills of quantities. The prices probably need to be, there's quite big price changes sometimes, and the exchange rate with the Ghana CD and the rest of the world fluctuates wildly on a daily basis. So what we did was we asked all 13 centres in the Ashanti region to submit a statement of needs. And the ISIS regional coordinator, a chap called Daniel Amo, in conjunction with myself, we decided on the 5 most needy centres. And they turned out to be Afo-Ako ISIS, Amoawe, Abo Samso, Nerabihi, and the Juraman. And, they are getting boreholes, toilets, Juraman already has a borehole, which we provided in the district grant. So, global grant expenditure estimate. Per that summary, the work per the summary of needs, it's about $45,000. And as I say, there's price changes, there's exchange differences, so there's a 10% contingency on top of that. There's an allowance for international travel and subsistence, which should allow 2 Rotarians to travel over and look it over and see, and also start off the impact assessment in conjunction with the host Rotary Club. There's an allowance for costs for the host Rotary Club because they will need to do a fair bit of travelling. These 5 centres, if you take the distance, the furthest distance between any 2, it's probably over 100 miles. And also, importantly, there's an allowance in there for water and hygiene education. So that comes to $55,000. And the way I see that being arrived at is club funds of $10,000, and district has promised that they would put in $20,000 DDF on the basis of $10,000. So the $10,000, 50% match fund, because the grant was set up before the change in the rules. So we would get 5,000 from the World Fund, and of course you get 100% match on the DDF, which is 20,000. 25,000 added on to the 30 is the 55,000. And we're a good bit of the way of getting that 10,000. My own club has contributed, has pledged money. My wife and I have pledged money. The Rotary Club of Coppervick have pledged money, and an individual Banff Rotarian has given money at this point in time. So where are we with this global grant? In October, November last year, statement of needs from each centre assessed, 5 most needy centres selected. November, the cost estimates prepared. December, questionnaires prepared and issues, separate ones for the management committee, the staff and the students. Questionnaires returned and assessed in January, led to further questions inevitably. And then in March 2020, my wife and I visited Ghana to hold focus group meetings at each of the centres with each of the different categories of participant. We only managed to do 2 centres before we had to abandon and scuttle off home. The COVID crisis indicated that if we didn't get home quickly, we weren't going to get home at all. So we changed our flights and left Kumasi to go back to Accra, and then sat in Accra for 48 hours whilst flight after flight was cancelled. We did eventually get home, but it took us 63 hours of travelling and sitting about in the airports. But we did get home, and we did self-isolate for 2 weeks when we got back. So we've still got 3 centres to do the focus group meetings. They had actually been carried out by the regional coordinator this week. He was doing them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. He is quite a capable person. He sat with us during the first 2, and he's well aware of what's needed and what he needs to provide back to us. During that visit, we agreed that the Rotary Club of Kumasi Nyasu would be the host club for the project. And just a few photos just to prove that I was at Abu Samso. That's the only building they have in a teaching block. They've got quite a lot of land. And this is the focus group with the management committee. It's kind of hot inside the building, and so We sat outside underneath the shade of a tree. I think that was really for Fiona and myself, for our purposes. I'm sure they would have coped, but we might have struggled. And here is at Afolaco. We had a big introductory meeting. The local MP came along. So that was a pre-meeting before the focus groups. That's me there. And just to show you the level of facilities, that's the urinals. They're okay, they're functional, but maybe not as much privacy as you might want. And then what I call the long trek. It's about a 150-yard trek from the main campus bit to these, the toilets. Now that's about as close as I could get to them without being sick. The smell was terrible. I could not have entered that toilet, no matter what. I would have had to have gone to the field if I needed. You know, they are, really are. So you can see that there's been quite a lot done. There's quite a lot more that could be done. We certainly make inroads into that if we're successful with the global grant. If anybody that's listening, you know, would like more information about the global grant, or in fact what we've done, because I really could speak for hours and hours and hours on this. I've tried to keep it as short as possible. Contact me, John Calder at the Rotary Club of Banff. My email address is there. I'm sure, Mary, you'll be able to circulate that to participants. My phone numbers are there. I'm still looking for $3,000. I've still to get $3,000 to reach that magic number of 10. And if you or your club could assist and be part of this exciting project, that would be great. Not just for yourselves, from you know, the aspect of being part of a really good you know, project, which is bringing hope to the young people in Ghana, but obviously the people in Ghana are benefiting enormously. So thank you very much for listening to me tonight. I've gone through it quite quickly. As I say, I could have spoken for hours, but that's what I have to say. I hope that's given you a flavour, and I'm quite happy to answer any questions that might come up. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Right. Let me just get back to this. I'll stop sharing. Right. I'll go back onto mute at the moment.
Okay, can you see if anyone has questions, Ken?
Nobody's has a question yet. If anyone has a question, we can't see everybody on the screen. So if you click on participants, and you can raise hand, and we'll see that on the screen to see if there are any questions. So click on participants, raise hand, and we'll see if there's anybody. So Brian Johnson of Glenrothes. Brian, do you want to come in?
Good evening. Great presentation. Thank you, John. It's very encouraging what you've been doing there. How long are the people in vocational training for in these places, and how do you get a measure of how successful they've been?
Right. Okay. The answer to the first part of your question is quite simple. It's a 3-year course. And you know, there are national examinations that they have to sit and pass. So it's a 3-year course. Each of the centres claim to, you know, track their students when they leave to see, you know, what happens to them. a lot of the centres are claiming quite high success rates. It's difficult for me to, fully verify that. And I'm talking with the ISIS directorate at the moment, the director in Accra, so that we can get a much more formal measure of that. But I think that, based on the level of work that, I have seen from these students, under the direction of the teaching staff, obviously, these people are acquiring good skills. And if they have good skills, they will get employment, rather than, this street selling, where they walk about with packets of chewing gum or whatever and stop cars. But we're trying to, I'm trying to instill in them that it's very important that they get a much more formal system. And so the directorate in Accra have taken that on board and are starting to work that. But most of them claim 90–95% success rate of, people being gainfully employed. Perhaps I'm cynical, but I don't think it will be as high as that. But there is no doubt in my mind that a lot of them do actually move on and get jobs. And in fact, the Rotarian from the Rotary Club of Nyasaland, with a very successful construction business coming through ISIS, I think it's wonderful.
Could I just ask a supplementary there?
Yeah.
The second project that you're gathering funds together for at the moment,
Yeah.
you've got 5 places there, I think.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking they were all pretty well for boreholes and water and sanitation and toilets and things?
Yeah.
So in other words, are those 5 places all well equipped at the moment with the workshops and the accommodation?
No, not necessarily. The statement of needs that came in, I mean, let me think, we were talking approximately 300,000 Ghana CD available, $55,000, about 3,000 Ghana CD. The statement of needs when they came in from the 13 centres totaled in excess of 1.5 million CD for what they thought they wanted. So there was quite a lot of, pruning out. And so what we decided to do was that we decided to focus on, water and sanitation. Because water and sanitation, the disease levels, it really was causing a problem, because a lot of, you could see from the attendance records that there was quite a lot of sickness, and they were, sort of waterborne, type of diseases. So we decided to concentrate on that. If this global grant project goes ahead, and I hope it will, and I fully expect that we'll get a successful conclusion to it if it does go ahead. There's still plenty more that can be done, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to introduce the mentoring aspect, towards the centre managers, to make them much more self-sufficient and being able to try to approach people to look for funding. I've provided seed funding, and local people have then sort of said, oh, it's all happening, I want to be part of that. And top marks to the manager at my original centre, who has gone out and surprised me when he sent me a WhatsApp message a couple of weeks ago, saying, oh, I've got funding for the classroom block and the ICT lab. And I said, brilliant, that's really great.
Okay, and Ian Morris, Ellen.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening, I should say. John, that's absolutely fantastic. And congratulations, you seem to have empowered those on the ground to take on the initiative of moving your vision forward with less and less input from yourself, I detect. I've got really just one question. Is this the first global grant that you've applied for this broad project?
It's the first global grant that I've applied for this project. We've had the global, we had the district grant for the 3 boreholes for this project. This is the first global grant for this project, but I do have experience of global grants because, as I said early on in my presentation, that I was leading the district VTT global grant, and that was funded by global grant. So I actually made the global grant application then.
Okay, thank you. I'm handling a global grant and learned a few things, and I'll maybe call you if I don't know who's coordinating the distribution of your presentation, but when I get your contact details, I'll give you a call and have a chat.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks very much. Very interesting. Very interesting.
No problem at all.
Are there any further questions for John?
No, there was just the 2, Brian and Ian. So if anybody does, you've got about a minute maximum or something to get your hand up, or we'll hand back to Mary. No, it's all yours, Mary.
Thank you. Well, I would probably have about 100 questions, John, so I wouldn't even start asking them. I found it really interesting, fascinating for me, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. So thanks very much for your presentation and for being the guinea pig. Really
I've enjoyed it. I'm enthusiastic about the project, and I'm always looking for people to listen to me.
Yeah, very well. This has been recorded, so I will get it onto the website, and we'll maybe get a link into the next Vision 1010 magazine. Right. And failing that, if anybody wants to get in touch with John, if you can't find his details, get in touch with me, and we'll pass you on. Is there anything else you think? Any lessons learned that you want to share with MD? I think it was a pretty good presentation. I think you kind of know everything.
Yeah, after the wee hiccup at the start, I don't know what happened, but it went okay after that.
Yeah, it's fine. We've got a couple of minutes left. Brian, do you want to ask about the Yemen?
Yes, thanks, Mary. It's just that 1 or 2 people in our club in Glenrothes had expressed an interest in perhaps doing a little project for the Yemen, but realistically speaking, it would be quite small, and we wondered whether we could piggyback with anybody else if anyone else was doing anything in that vicinity. Does anybody know of anyone?
If anybody is, put up your hand just now. So let's click on participants and raise hand. No, there's nobody coming in on that one, I'm afraid, Brian.
Okay. Difficult area to work with, I think, anyway, Ken, but thanks a lot for giving me the chance to ask.
Okay.
No bother. Okay, well, I think at the moment I have quite a lot of response, and there's a lot of interesting projects going on out there, as I say, that people are happy to present. I'm trying to put together a programme for the rest of the Rotary year that fits in around about Rotary Club nights and whatever, so we're never going to be able to get a night that fits everybody. I'm happy for if anybody's got any suggestions of a better time of the day or whatever, then feel free to get in touch. But in the meantime, I'm just going to try and change the next one to a Wednesday night or a Monday night or whenever we get the most support for. So if there's nothing else, I will say thanks very much again, John, and hopefully we'll see everybody else again soon. Thanks for hosting, Ken.
No worry.